Emil Smith-Rowe bursting into the box, and that is a wonderful finish from Emil Smith-Rowe. It's his first goal in a Fulham shirt, certainly at Premier League level. It's the first of many, and look at the smile on his face. That's a quality goal from a quality player.
Hello and welcome to the That's So Craven podcast, your one-stop shop for all things Fulham. We are back again to preview the Man City game. Fulham going into this game off the back of a win against Nottingham Forest, riding high at the moment, sitting 6th in the Premier League, and here to talk through the biggest challenge yet this season, we have Elton. How are we going tonight?
Yeah, pretty good, thanks. Spending my waking moments trying to work out how we can actually pick up some points over the weekend. But I'm sure Marco doesn't need my help, but I do it anyway.
Well, I'm sure he's trying to find any possible way to get a result in this one. It's a big game for us, and one that we we'll discuss at length. Skibby, how are we tonight?
I'm very good, thank you. So yeah, looking forward to. Well, it's a weird time to be looking forward to a Man City game, but it's just because we're in such decent form that you never know. Always hoping, never expecting. There we go.
So that's the Fulham way, isn't it? Always hoping, never expecting, and never being given what you actually want either. It is a weird one, and I sort of said it in our little write up for this that will go alongside the podcast. That I had a quick look at the head-to-head between Fulham and Man City, and there's a lot of L's. In fact, I think in the last 15 games, we haven't even managed a draw against Man City. Our last time we took a point off them was back in 2011. We haven't beaten Man City since 2009, and we were talking just before the pod about the team that went out against Fulham that game, and the names are, it's definitely, like you said, Skibby, pre-oil money. It's a very, very different Man City from then. And this Man City side is a team who put 9 past us across our 2 games last season, a team who we always seem to struggle against no matter what kind of form we're in. So you're right, though, it does feel different going into this game. I feel like this Fulham team are starting to really gel and get results that are quite tough ones as well. And we saw it against Nottingham Forest that this team can knuckle down and get points when needed and work hard. So I'm actually looking forward to a Man City game for once, which is a weird thing. And the fact that it's the last game before the international break as well means I think that even if we do get flogged, it's not going to actually have a huge effect on the whole squad. Let's crack into it. But before we do, let's just as always, mention the Fulham Discord, the That's So Craven Discord. You can find the link in our bio on Twitter. You can also find it anywhere you find our links as well. So Facebook, Instagram, all over the place. TikTok as well, still going. Please do join into the Discord. There's loads of great chat there every single day around general Fulham chat, transfers, FPL if that's your thing, Fulham Women's as well. Lots of updates coming through there at all times. Also, cravenpod.com, regular updated articles there as well. So please do check out the website and jump onto the Discord. Before we do crack into the Man City game, let's just recap the Forest game now that it's been a couple of days. Skibby, I'll throw to you first. How good a performance was that against an unbeaten Forest side?
It was a really good performance, I think. I'm not going to try and overshadow it by saying that, Morgan Gibbs-White missing was a huge thing and a huge factor in why we played so well, but it was quite evident that, they put 4 centre mids across the middle of the park. That was just to try and squeeze Fulham. They knew that, they had to keep Emil Smith-Rowe quiet. Yeah, therefore, if you try and push the ball out wide, we're not necessarily a team at the moment who's scoring from crosses and the like. So they had a game plan. They stuck to it. They made it difficult for us. But I think what's really evident was Leno had 1 shot to save, I think, apart from the goal that was offside. But he wasn't really well worked. Therefore, I think it was just the right result that Fulham managed to sort of sneak a win. But it's one of those ones where it was an ugly win. And it's one of those wins that the teams that are around sort of the top half of the table sort of push to get. they may not deserve it necessarily for being so good in front of goal, but they are getting the points. And I think that's the big key for me. Sometimes we've been in games where, Newcastle comes to mind last season, where we were really knocking on the door, just couldn't get the breakthrough, and then we lose 1-0. So to have a game where we seemed comfortable in possession, we didn't seem to be like in a position where we would concede. However, we got the lucky penalty, I would say, and then ground out a 1-0 win. And I think that's the more important thing, is not playing the Marco way, which is, score more than you, but, the ugly win, as it were, of grinding out a 1-0 win against a very, very good Forest team, who were unbeaten, as you say, at their place, which, Liverpool lost to them. Therefore, I would say it's a huge, huge result. But, yeah, it's definitely something, and it's definitely an improvement, and we are seeing that improvement game by game, which I'm really enjoying.
Yeah, and like you said, it's an ugly win, and that's a phrase that you hear all the time, and it's always important for teams who are sort of mid-table to even lower mid-table teams, and even teams fighting relegation, to get those ugly wins. And it's something that Fulham maybe haven't been that great at in the last couple of years. We had it easy in the Championship, let's be honest. You don't need ugly wins when you're winning 7-0 every week. And then in the Premier League, we've had a couple of good seasons where we get good results against teams around us, but we dominate with the style of play. But coming up against this Forest side, who, are quite a gritty side and actually managed to get good results, especially at home, it was always going to be a tough game. And those are the games over the last couple of years where we've seen Fulham kind of roll over a little bit. We saw it last season when we were 3-0 down after half an hour. And the fact that we sort of dug our heels in and we won ugly it's a really important little turning point for us. Dad, do you feel like this Fulham team are maybe more willing to win ugly now?
Well, I firstly, great summary there, Skibby. Very, very good summary. I was thinking, God, what am I going to add to that? But actually, you pretty much said it all, and very eloquently. The one thing I'd probably disagree with both of you is I don't think I wouldn't characterize it as an ugly win, because I don't think an ugly win is sort of when you get it over the line and your football is really without purpose, without plan, and somehow you just muscle it over the line. I don't think it was like that. I think what Skibby said probably articulates it very well, and he said that both goalkeepers, particularly Leno, was unchallenged. So you have this sort of massive arm wrestle everywhere else, except a lot of activity in terms of shots on goal. And I think, to be fair to Forest, they had a good plan. They made it really difficult for us rather than ugly. I think they made it really difficult because they did work us out, and they shut down key channels for us. I think I'd probably, I think I'm probably a bit more comfortable with that. Someone's telling me my audio is quiet. I could change that, but probably not while I'm talking, because that would be too much for me. But no, I also think that the so-called ugly win, where you somehow get a result, even when things are going against you and you can't seem to score, but you get a result, is definitely something that very successful teams, that is a character of very successful teams, and it probably defines certainly what happens to a lot of those top 4, 5, 6 teams. They somehow manage to win, even against the run of play. So I'm hopeful that is starting to become a feature of this Fulham side. It's possibly a little early to call that, but if that's the way it's going, happy days.
Yeah, look, maybe it's unfair to call it ugly, and what I more mean when I say ugly is hard fought, and maybe focusing on a different style of football to get a win rather than sticking with the Marco way, which we know works against teams where we have better quality than them. But when we match up against similar teams whose tactics may be, counter suited to ours, I think it's important that we adapt, and it's probably something that one of the few things that I think Marco could have done better over the last few years is adapting to opposition tactics a little bit more. And I'm starting to see more and more that Marco actually makes those changes. And I'm really liking some of the things that he's doing, especially, we've thrown away a couple of late leads or late results this season already. And the fact that we now see Diop coming on pretty regularly at the sort of 80th minute, 5 at the back, he's looking really solid. And it's obviously something that Marco's been working on with the players on the training ground, because everyone seems to know their role, where Diop's in there as a bit of a stopper and a body. And it's working, and I think everything's starting to click. And look, the Forest result was a really good one. It was a game that I was kind of nervous in a way going into, thinking this just feels like one of those games where you're not going to pick up a result. So not nervous that we're going to get flogged or it's going to be a horrible game, but just the fact that these are the games where we usually drop points. And so to come out of this, there was this great sense of satisfaction that, geez, we can actually get wins in these kind of games. And I think that's something that's going to be really important this season. And it's helped us get off to this brilliant start so far. And we'll look at the league table a little bit later. But, if we'd managed to hold on against West Ham and even hold on against Man United as well, we'd be sitting in second in the league at the moment. And these are just, Scott Parker moment, the fine margins where Fulham are really close to being a very well-established Premier League team, which is kind of all you can hope for as a Fulham fan, let's be honest. Because from there, you can actually build and become one of those teams that challenges for Europe going forward. But look, moving forward, and Skibby, I'll throw to you first, with Man City up ahead. I guess the mark of a team who can challenge for Europe and can push on is being able to get results against teams like Man City. And it's not a team we've been able to get anything against for a very long time. How important do you think it is just mentally for Fulham to actually get one over Man City, who have had one over us for such a long time? Because you look at the other teams in the Big Six, Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, these are teams that we've been getting results against on a semi-regular basis over the last few years. Man City is a different kettle of fish.
Yeah, and to be honest, Man City is the one fixture I think everyone in the league, even Arsenal at this point in time, kind of write off. Man City at the Etihad is just a game which you don't expect points, but you kind of look at it and go, if you can get something, great, but it's not, the primary focus. It's not the end all of everything if it doesn't go to plan. So, but saying that, the Man City of late, and I know Haaland has scored like 10 odd goals and is absolutely on fire, but they don't seem to be the same beast that they were around sort of 2 seasons ago, where they were actually a machine. I even watched Man City yesterday against Slovan and Bratislava, and they seem to be kind of robotic in the way that they would try and sort of build up play and try and score goals. And if it wasn't going to plan, they didn't seem to have a plan B, which is quite interesting. Haaland, I think he touched the ball twice in that entire game, but one of them was a through ball where he was through on goal, round the keeper and scores. So, it's just to have somebody that clinical in your side proves just how how much of a luxury it is to have someone like that in your team. But I mean, I remember, and I was sort of researching as you were talking, which was there was a Man City game of when did the switch flick, and I realised, this Man City team was something special, and it was actually in November 2010. And I remember sitting in the home end at Craven Cottage and watching, and I think we were 3-0 down after 30 minutes. And Yaya Toure was absolutely tearing us apart. And you're just thinking from there, that was probably one of the moments where I kind of, applauded an opposition team coming to the Cottage, because Yaya Toure, and for me, I get asked this a lot, which is, who's the best Premier League player you've ever seen live? And Yaya Toure for me is up there. And I just think that ever since then, they've stamped on this kind of mentality. This winning mentality has been going for 14 years. And doesn't look like stopping. But like I said, at this point in time, I can see the last game against Newcastle, there was gaps. There were certain things that, they're missing Rodri, they're missing Kevin De Bruyne, and they're still playing with the thought of that luxury player who can win you games and who can, keep the shape. And for me, even against Bratislava yesterday, I mean, they were very much like a League One, maybe even a Championship side. But they were even finding spaces on the break. There was at points Akanji goes out wide, very similar to what Liverpool did last season. They do as well, which is Trent Alexander-Arnold, the right back, sort of goes into a centre mid position when they're in possession. Akanji goes to sort of right back, Stones in the middle, and then Guardiola decides where he wants to be. He could either stay back or go forward. But once you sort of get in a foot race with John Stones and sort of Guardiola or Akanji, that's where I'm starting to think that Adama could definitely hurt them. Reece Nelson coming off the bench and being that kind of direct impact, he can hurt them. I think Smith Rowe can hurt them without that Rodri figure protecting the back four. So there's a quiet optimism for me that makes me think that they're not a wounded animal, but they are not the same beast. It's more like an aging beast. They're not the same beast that they were 2 years ago, where I wouldn't just write them off and just say, yeah, this is going to be 3 or 4 or 5. But I can actually see a game where, if we play to our strengths and people will actually stay true to their position and are disciplined. So this is where Lukic is going to be very important, I believe, sort of trying to break up play between the lines. But I do see a quiet piece of optimism that we could get a point against Man City, or maybe even more.
But you're right. There's big players missing in Kevin De Bruyne, Rodri, Nathan Ake out as well, who would usually be a starter. You've got the sort of two defensive midfielders of Kovacic and Rico Lewis. It's different from seeing De Bruyne and Rodri, comparing them to Kovacic and Rico Lewis. Obviously, Grealish, Gundogan, Silva, Phil Foden, Doku off the bench as well. Like, there's a lot of quality there. But I think you're right. When you lose a couple of key players, it does make a massive difference to just the way that you play, because so much goes through Rodri, so much goes through De Bruyne. Dad, how important do you think those injuries are actually going to play out to be? Not across the whole season, because I think across the season it will make quite a big difference. But in the actual game this weekend against Fulham, how important are those two players being out for Man City?
Well, if I may, can I answer a different question? Your previous one.
Yeah.
I kind of disagree with the way in which I think this Fulham team and Marco will travel to the Etihad, because number one, I think one of the things that elite teams do very, very well is create a bubble and shut out a lot of noise and sort of create that unity and a feeling and a great sense of belief. And number one, we're actually delivering and doing pretty well. So I think there's a lot of confidence around the squad. I think more generally, there's a lot of confidence from the last couple of years' results and performances. So we've been saying it for a long time, but this Fulham squad and this team, I really do think they can get a result anywhere. You mentioned historically our track record against City, which on paper doesn't read very well, but mercifully, the current players in this squad have not suffered those 11 defeats or the 20 years of pain that we've really had against them. So there's that, which probably gives them again. They wouldn't be deeply depressed by turning up against Man City, and I think elite level players, a little bit like the World Cup, even if you're a pretty average nation, elite level professionals love the opportunity to showcase or at least have a crack against the very best. Because if you can beat your man who is a poster boy, for football itself on the day, that's really something. Um, and I think they're a bit of a target in a way. Not that anyone generally lands many points on their chin, but they are a target. Everyone wants to beat them. It's a big day if you even, draw against Man City. And I think rather than being negative about a fixture against Man City, I think teams like Fulham actually look at it with a bit of excitement as a bit of an opportunity.
Yeah. I thought you were going to keep going there.
I can if you like.
Well, I agree. I think in a way, as Skibby said at the start, you look at Man City on your fixture list and on your calendar and go, "Yep, that's a write-off." But the flip side of that is you can look at it and go, "It's a bit of a free hit." And I don't think Marco's ever going to go out there and go gung ho and see if we can score more goals than them on the day, because that's realistically not going to happen. But it does mean the pressure is off in a sense, because you're not expecting to even get a point there. So if you park the bus and do really well defensively and really shut them down and do get a point, it feels like a win. And we haven't got a point from Man City in 13 years. A point against Man City at the Etihad would be a win for us. And I think it would also send quite a big message to the other teams around us that this is a Fulham team who can grind out wins against teams around us, get wins against teams below us quite comfortably, and also really challenge the teams at the top of the league. Because when we look at the fact that we've played Newcastle and beaten them this season, we've played Man United and unfortunately slipped to defeat late on through, an early season slip up. We already look like a team who, are here to challenge for European places. So I don't see why we can't go to Man City and actually put up a really good fight and potentially upset them. Because I think now, and actually I'll pose a question to you, Skibby. Do you think now is probably our best chance of getting something against Man City compared to years gone past, especially the previous couple of years?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the confidence is high. We've got a much better squad than we've had. And I think the evidence is there. I mean, I remember the away game a couple of years ago where we really took the game to them. Well, I think we were a bit under the cosh, if I'm honest, but I think Cancelo gets sent off and a penalty, and we're somehow 1-1. We were really holding on against 10-man Man City, which means, they were in a different breed back then. But, it took a 90x minute penalty to defeat us. And I think that is definitely show the signs of, this squad hasn't drastically changed. Yes, we haven't got sort of Paulinho and Mitrovic, but I think we've moved on from those sort of days and we have become a better squad. That, we took the game to them once, got a 1-1 into the last minutes. Why can't we do that again? I think it's just being able to be, I think using the squad to be disciplined, to make sure that we basically just don't make any silly mistakes, which I think is come out of the game. Obviously, if we had, Diop playing, I think there's certain areas of the pitch, especially in defence, where there would be a guaranteed mistake under pressure from a really high press Man City team. But with Anderson coming in, I think with Lukic stepping up, I think with the sort of the figureheads that we've now got who are a lot more composed than we were, I think we should be in a position where we should be able to at least contain them and not lose to some stupid mistakes, which I think, I think when we lose sort of like the 4 or 5-1s, there's always something where, heads drop and, just the floodgates open. And I just don't think I see that in this squad. I think this squad seems to have, like I said, a lot more composure and a lot more bravery about them. That, we went to Old Trafford and we didn't look flustered. We didn't look out of place. I mean, granted, Manchester United aren't fantastic, but, this was the start of the season for them. They had a lot of positives going into the season. They weren't dropping points and their heads dropping like they are now. But, going to Old Trafford, holding your own is one thing. So definitely, why can't this Fulham team go to the Etihad and hold their heads high and take a game to Man City. Like you say, it's a free hit. So for me, as long as we don't lose to something really stupid, then I'll consider that a plus and we move on regardless of the score.
I think you make yet another great point, Skibby. And
I'm on fire today, aren't I?
yeah, mate. I hope the AI is going to clip this well. But
I'll just log off now, I reckon.
Yeah, no, great point. I'll just go on mute as well. Just carry on, Skibby. No, seriously. I think 6 games in, I think that point you made is that one thing we can say about this Fulham team is that suddenly there are fewer mistakes, particularly in that last line of defence. And it seems a bit cruel because we take Diop out of the picture and out of the regular lineup, and suddenly those mistakes go away. But I would say that our friend Tosin was equally likely to be blamed, in seasons gone as well. But the one thing I would say going into this game is that we're not Arsenal, and so can we really expect to outplay them man for man? Like just have a blinding game all around the park and the way we normally play, and on that basis beat them? I'm saying probably not. And so I would hope that Silva does go into this game with a kind of adaptable mind and try and do a few things a little bit differently. And, for example, who's lining up against Adama? And if it's not the one we want, because we think there's a chink there, switch him. Because if you look at it, Adama, key weapon, he is cheat mode against any side because no one can beat him, right? So you have to give him an opportunity to exploit a weakness, no matter who comes up against him, switch him, find a way to allow him to open up somewhat, open up in behind. And the other thing you'd have to say is that whilst they've got plenty of goal scoring capability, you take Haaland out of the game by somehow marking him aggressively, it gives you a slightly better chance. You do somewhat disable the machine. Not that they're not capable of scoring 5 without Haaland, but when he's on fire and he scores 3 before half time, that's problematic. And so, a couple of really sort of key things like that, if we can really target, not weaknesses, but, like the Haaland power and find a way to release. Maybe Reece Nelson and, as you said, ESR could be really dangerous for them as well. They're world-class players, let's be honest.
Yeah, I think we say this every week, there's a potential for Silva to try something different, but let's be perfectly honest, I think we're going to see the same 11 again. We'll get into the potential lineups, but I do agree with you. There's the potential for things like maybe Adama doesn't start, even though he's had such a good start to the season, and you actually save Reece Nelson and Adama to come on in the 60th minute when we're potentially 1-0 down and need to stretch the game a little bit, and you try and change it up like that, or you start Reece Nelson and Adama and say, right, let's exploit any potential counter-attacking opportunities that we have and have 2 very direct players playing on the wing so that when you get the ball, you spread it wide to them and you use someone like Anderson who can play those balls over the top to try and exploit that and maybe stretch the game a little bit in that sense. There's definitely the opportunity to do something like that. And there's a question on our live stream as well posed by Ashley Mayhew, asking, do we think Berger has a case to come in and try and shore up the midfield and add a bit more physicality? I think that's definitely on the cards as well. I guess let's get into the conversation around a starting lineup, because I think I posed this in our group chat over the last couple of days. Do we see the potential for Andreas Pereira potentially being the one who loses out, and Sander Berger and Sasa Lukic starting in that 6 and 8? Not sure what order they'd be in, because I'm not really sure when they come on who plays where. But do we think potentially Silva could do something like that to try and add a bit more physicality? Skibby?
Yes. But it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Mm.
It's in a game against Man City or anyone top like this. I think for us, and I know people are going to slate me for this because we haven't scored from a set piece this season. I don't think, but set pieces are crucial against teams where you're starved of the ball and you're struggling to create because in the blink of an eye you get a Dharma shirt pull on the wide right, and then suddenly you're slinging the ball into the box to where anything can happen. I think thoughts always go back to the awful own goal that Company scored against us, where he just suddenly roofed it in the back of the net for no reason. That those kind of chances are really key for us in a game like this. And I think if you take Pereira out, who's going to be able to deliver that sort of that corner or that free kick, which will be very vast and few between. But I do see the potential of the low block. Berger and Lukic sitting in, crowding out the middle for Man City, forcing the ball out wide, similar to what Forest did to us, which was, they packed out the middle. They were basically said, you can't hurt us through the middle, so you got to get out wide. And then once you sort of get the ball out wide, then it's up to Doku or Silvinho or whoever starts out wide to basically play that killer ball when they've potentially got to beat, Tete Robinson, which isn't an easy task because they're both very athletic players. So I can see the benefit of both. And if I'm honest, I would prefer Berger to start over Andreas, just because I think that physicality is something which Man City don't have. Therefore, if you do get the opportunity to hurt them with a set piece, I'd rather have 6'5" Berger on the pitch to attacking the ball than Andreas putting it into Jimenez. I don't really know who on the field in the current starting lineup that we played against Forest would attack a ball and basically be able to out-strengthen a Man City defence. But for me, I would very much, not say I like to see, but I think it makes absolute tactical sense for Andreas out and Berger in, just to solidify that centre midfield and protect the back four.
Lots of wise words there, Skibby, again. But you know what I think is going to happen? I think
Nothing.
Marco... Yeah, well, we're all talking about changes. Even Jack said he's not going to make a change, and then Jack went into a long one about the changes he's going to make. But I think he's going to save Sasa Lukic on 4 yellow cards for Villa. And he will start Berger and actually keep Lukic on the bench to minimise his exposure to getting another yellow.
The only worry that I have, though, is that Andreas is such a luxury player, isn't he? That you just can't see him defending against Man City. But
No, I agree. The other question, and you sort of mentioned it a little bit when you're talking about the set pieces, Skibby, is there the potential for Muniz to come into the lineup? I know Jimenez is in such good form at the moment, but Muniz's physicality against this Man City defence, and we see it whenever Muniz plays, he's up in the grill, and his hold-up play is definitely better than Jimenez's, which also tends to work for those quick breaks where we've seen it a lot, where he's very good at playing the ball out wide to Adama running in behind. Could it be a possibility to make a few changes for this game and bring in Muniz, have someone like Raul come off the bench if you need to push, and maybe we go down and we're trying to push for an extra goal late on? Is there the potential there?
I'll let Elton take that one.
You can say no.
Well, I think you guys are coming up with some wonderful variations, and this is, you'd fit right in to the team planning meeting. But there'd be one guy sitting at the end of the table, and he's Portuguese, and he'd be going, nope, because he's just not going to make the change. I just think it would be out of character and out of style for Marco to bench Jimenez. I think he's so desperate for one of his strikers to really, really hit form that I think he'd be so reluctant to tactically rest Jimenez with the number of goals he scored. No, I mean, it's not been crazy, but it's been a goal a game, and that's pretty good for a Fulham striker right now. And the problem is Mooney's doesn't really look like challenging for it. He doesn't look like scoring at the moment. Let's be honest. We all want him to, but he doesn't really look like he's about to overtake Mooney's and rip that number 9 shirt off him, if you know what I mean.
The only thing I would say is I would keep Muniz on the bench just because if we are still within touching distance or the game is still tied coming into the 60th or 70th minute, he brings the chaos. It's mine and Sam's favourite term at the moment, but he brings the chaos. Like if you remember the goals against Brighton where, they were both trying to tackle Muniz and he just falling arse over tit onto the ball and somehow falls into Harry Wilson's lap and he scores. Like imagine that, where he's just bundling people over and suddenly the ball breaks to Adama and he's in. But for me, I think you can't drop Jimenez just because he's 3-3. I mean, 3 goals in 6 games is actually quite a good return in the world where Haaland and Palmer don't exist and ruining the league for everyone. But I just can't see him being dropped just because of a tactical reason when, you don't want to ruin the confidence. If your striker's scoring, you've got to keep him in.
Yeah, I agree.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. Like I said, like we've all said, I don't think there's going to be any changes, but let's be honest, if we could easily have a 4-minute podcast if we really wanted to, because we just say, yeah, lineup's going to be the same this week. Good luck, everyone. Let's go.
I mean, what are the chances of Pereira coming out and we actually start with the 5 at the back with Diop?
It's not out of the question, but I think that
I hope
it kind of goes
too negative. But...
No, it goes against the culture, the sort of ethos that I think Marco goes with, which is that we actually go out and attack and try and win games. We don't often go out there with a mindset of let's keep a clean sheet, and we've seen it against the big 6 over the last couple of years. We didn't go out and say, yeah, let's just park the bus against Arsenal. We went out and got results against them across the season, and same with Liverpool as well. We go out there and actually try and beat them. The problem with Man City, as you said before, is they were at least just a very different beast. And it doesn't matter what you do against them. And you see it, even the big 6 go out there and play against Man City. It doesn't really matter what you do. They still get the win most weeks. So I think we're getting to the stage now, though, where this team seems a lot more settled than it has done over the last few years, especially impressive considering the fact that we've lost Palhinha, we've lost Mitrovic over the last couple of seasons. But I'm looking forward to seeing if Marco does make any changes and seeing what we try, because I think we all expect us to come out with the same 11, but it'd be interesting to see what Marco's thinking is on this one, and if he's going to try and surprise Man City in a way, because Man City are probably expecting us to come out with the same 11. And as Ashley says on our live stream here, I think if there's any game we're going to see a change to the 11, it is against City, considering we're going to have to accept probably 20% possession, which is absolutely right. And it's about how we use that 20% possession, because you know that realistically that's all we're going to get. So players like Adama become very, very important at that point. And a player like Jimenez, who is scoring every chance that he gets, is important, because when you get that opportunity, you have to take it against a team like Man City. But even going back a little bit further, and it's a point that you've both made, where this isn't a team that makes errors at the moment. We've had some lapses in concentration with some late goals, but there's not the silly mistakes that we've been making over the last couple of seasons that throw away results. And so that's why going into this game, I feel slightly more at ease. I don't feel like we're just waiting for an error to happen. I feel like if there is an error, it's going to be forced by Man City, and I'm kind of okay with that. Let's have a look at recent form. Fulham's obviously very good at the moment. 5 games unbeaten. I think it's actually 6 games unbeaten so far, because before that Ipswich game, I think was the Birmingham City game in the Cup. Leicester. And then Birmingham in the Cup before that as well.
7.
So actually 7 games unbeaten at the moment for Fulham, which is a very good return. We're ignoring the fact that we did sort of lose to Preston, but not really. Look, like we've said, it's looking really good at the moment. We're only conceding 1 goal when we lose games at the moment, which is also a real positive. I think the fact that we are conceding but not getting put away by teams at the moment, which is really good. Man City, obviously, very good form as well, also unbeaten. Draws with Inter Milan, Arsenal, and Newcastle, nothing to sniff at, and then wins against Watford and Slovan Bratislava. It's going to be a really tough game. I think we're all aware of that and understand that. Quick look at the table. Man City currently sitting in second, 14 points, 4 wins, 2 draws, no losses. Another potential unbeaten streak that Fulham can snap this weekend. Fulham sitting in sixth, 3 wins, 2 draws, 1 loss, goal difference of 3 and 11 points on the board. Look, a point here definitely sees us remain in the top half, but more so, I think a point proves that this Fulham team is one to contend with this season. Skibby, we had a bit of a look forward at some of the coming fixtures after this. We obviously play Aston Villa after the international break, but then the fixture list does actually take fairly good care of Fulham going through October and November.
Yeah, I think there's definitely got to be one eye on that, I think, which comes back to Elton's great point of, do we risk Lukic getting a booking and losing for the Villa game, which arguably is probably the toughest game post Man City, and probably, I'll say the toughest game, but the toughest post Man City, which is winnable, if that makes sense. So, I mean, if we write off Man City, take Lukic out and then save him for Villa, then that makes incredible sense to me. But, I mean, exactly that. We've got to, at the least, damage limitation against Man City, because we don't want to lose the momentum. We don't want to lose the confidence that we've built. And then, yeah, Aston Villa is definitely a winnable game, I think, because Ipswich gave them a fantastic game. And we've played Ipswich. We know how difficult they can be. So I think it's starting to open up, especially with Villa on the horizon, that's a much winnable game. But then the way that the table's planned out, I think we've got Brentford, Palace.
Yeah,
Wolves?
so it goes Everton away, followed by
Everton.
Brentford at the Cottage on a Monday night. Then Palace away, then Wolves at home. That takes us through to December.
What is it, 4 of the bottom 5?
Yeah, Everton, Palace, Wolves.
Oh, I'm calling Brentford in the bottom 5 because I don't know how they're 12th. But
Fair enough.
But no, so yeah, I would say that, the way that the season's panning out, we're playing some teams who are at the wrong end of the table all in a row, which I don't think I've seen that in a long time, if it ever has occurred. And you know what? Before you know it, playing a team who, I think Palace and Wolves are winless at the moment, so
Correct. They're
going to be down on their luck. So to take the game to them, you fancy yourself for 3 points in each of those games. Everton are starting to come on their own a little bit, but I still think they're vulnerable. Brentford are just Brentford. They love to score in the first minute, but that's kind of it. But I think they've lost 3 in a row, I want to say. Just even though they've scored in the first minute, they always go on to lose.
I think they've taken 1 point from those 3 games.
Yeah, so I think for me, the eyes have got to be on Villa a little bit. Just give them a good game. I mean, it's at home, so I do fancy that. But at the same time, post that, that's where we've got to start to really pick up our points, because there's no point us going to... And this is what I've hated about, I want to say, last season or the season before, where... Probably both. Where we would go to Man City, give them a great game. We'd go to Arsenal, we'd take 3 points off Arsenal, and then, we'd go and lose to Burnley, and we'll go lose to the bottom teams. And I think that's the mentality that I'd love to see change. I'd love us to keep going to Man City, Villa, and trying to take points off of the bigger teams, the teams who are in the top half, top 6. But we really need to put away those teams that are below us for us to really solidify that sort of upper mid-table / top 8 position. It's just we were too much Robin Hooding at the moment, which is taking from the rich and giving to the poor.
No, I agree, and I think we saw it that first season we came up from the Championship back into the Premier League in this stint where I think you look at the table and we beat every team below us and lost to every team above us, which kind of makes sense as to where you sort of finish. I think we finished, perfectly mid-table, but it is one of those times where you do want to start getting those results against the teams above you sporadically, and make sure that you always beat the teams below you, no matter what. And like you said, after Villa, we've got Everton, Palace, Wolves, Brentford. Those teams between them have 3 wins from 24 games so far this season. Everton have to play a couple of tough games before they play us. It's definitely an opportunity to... I think we should be taking 12 points from those 4 games. Dad?
Yeah, I just think that if you reflect on the, it's only been a few weeks this season so far with international breaks, but it's actually been a pretty tricky opening that we've been, handed in terms of fixtures, and we've actually navigated it really, really well. Haven't, obviously taken 3 points left, right, and centre, but we've really navigated it well. And if we can get to the end of this little period that we're talking about, and on form, we should be winning all of those games and giving Villa a pretty good run at home. Good chance. I mean, that will be season defining. I think, come early December, um, that's in terms of improvement over the last couple of years. I think, we couldn't have dreamed of that kind of result by early December. And we've never had it. We've never had it. So I think this is actually looking like a really, really good season. So, for Marco so far, I really do.
Yeah, I think it was in our group chat, and I was looking at the fixtures coming up, and you do look at it and say, if we do manage to pull off that run of results against Brentford, Everton, Palace, and Wolves after we play Man City and Villa, and maybe pick up a couple of points from that Man City Villa little segment there. Let's even say that we take no points in those and pick up the 12 after that. It takes us to 23 points minimum from 12 games. At that point, you set yourself a really, really good base to actually kick on for the rest of the season. You've got 26 games to go. Even if you go at a point a game, you're actually pushing for 50 points quite comfortably at that point. And I think that's a kind of platform we need to be able to build on. I think it's too hard to go through the whole season and try and get that sort of 1.5 points per game every single game to get to 50. You really need a big stack of points early doors, and then the ability to just pick up points against teams below you. Look at, I'm looking the tables up now, and that bottom 5, Everton, Leicester, Palace, Southampton, Wolves, you should be winning every single one of those games twice this year. And that should be a very comfortable 30 points effectively there. So you just need to pick up 20 points from the rest of the league. And at the moment, we're looking like we're able to do that. It's just about making sure that we do get those results through that October-November period. And I think if we put in a good performance against Man City and Aston Villa, I think that will definitely get this group thinking that they will be able to take points off those teams and get wins and go into those games expecting to win, not in a cocky fashion, but expecting to actually get victories. And, as again, Ashley in our live stream mentions Wolves potentially being in a false position. They don't look like a terrible side, but despite having some good players, and I think you could say that about Palace as well, and Everton as well. These teams have good players, but the managers just aren't making it all click at the moment. And I think that is where Marco and Fulham have the edge over these other teams, is the fact that we do get results. And we're starting to look like a team who can pick up results from anywhere at the moment. And that's kind of why it's exciting going into this Man City game, because I feel like we're actually a good chance of coming away from the game with a point, potentially.
And to that point about Wolves, a couple of seasons ago, we were very similar to Wolves. If you look at, go around the park, player for player, there's some quality there, but it wasn't all happening. It wasn't reliable. And even though they've got a pretty good squad. We'd love to rummage through that squad and pick a few players out of there for ourselves, right? No problem at all. They're not rubbish at all. Yet at this league, at this level, that's what can happen when you can't put it together.
Yeah,
And I think
I
that's
mean, just to
exactly the
add to
point
that,
Skippy was making, right? That we're actually turning the corner now, and we're starting to not lose the games we should not lose.
yeah, and just to add to that, I think Wolves are in exactly the position they deserve to be. Personally, they've got a team of individuals. I would argue that Andre was not a player that O'Neill wanted. It was just an
Portuguese.
agent. Well, no, it was his agent. He's Jorge Mendes, I think it is. He just has a relationship with the Wolves ownership. Forced him in. O'Neill didn't want him. He's not an O'Neill player, and I'm now starting to see similarities of O'Neill and Parker, which is he's very stuck in his ways. If he loses, it's not his fault. And don't get me wrong. Like you say, they've got great individuals. They've got Lamina's doing great things. They've got Cunha up front. I think he's a great player. And obviously Andre's a great talent. But it's just falling down at the position when they're really most needed, I think, is, they're not playing as a team. I think the goalkeeper made quite a bad mistake, I think, against Liverpool in terms of saving the header from Konate. But I think it's just those sort of things. And when you look at them game by game, you start to think, oh, yeah, it's going against them a little bit. But when you start to bundle it all together and look at the bigger picture of they're making the same mistakes, they're not playing to the best of their abilities, and as a team, they're just sort of focusing on the individuals. That's why they're sitting 20th, and that's why a team like Ipswich aren't, in my opinion, who don't have the stars, but they do have a squad and a manager that they're willing to play for. So for me, I would not be surprised if Wolves stay in and around 20th for at least by Christmas.
Yeah. Look, I agree. I think they've got a couple of very good individual talents who I look forward to us hopefully poaching come the end of the season, but they're not clicking as a team. And I think you have to put that down to the manager. And I'd say, when you look at a team like Ipswich, who have a very good manager in place, it shows what you can do with a squad of players who, a lot of those Ipswich players as well, were playing in League One. So the fact that they're able to be at least showing more than Wolves are so far this season, I think means Wolves are probably in a fair position so far. Guys, before we do wrap up, I'll get a prediction from both of you for the game this weekend. Dad, I'll throw to you first. Be bold, be brave.
Be realistic.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say we get beaten 2-1.
Yeah, fairly realistic, I'll say. Skibby?
We're going to huff and we're going to puff, but it's going to be 2-0 City, I think.
Okay, well, I'll be the unrealistic person here. I'm not going to put
6-0.
forward a Jack's top tip. Yeah, I was going to say 4-0, Vinicius hat-trick off the bench. And a red card for him for punching someone as well.
A fan.
Nah, I think a 1-1 draw here. I think we're going to go ahead, and I can see Diop coming on in the 60th minute, but us not being able to hold on to the game. So I'm going to go 1-1. Jack's top tip. There it is. 1-1. Don't put money on that.
And I'll believe it when I see your receipt for the bet you made on that.
I'll submit my multi later on. It won't have a Fulham draw with Man City in it though. Although that will give me very good odds.
I was going to say, speaking of top tips, has anyone put £10 on us to win, or $10 on us to win the league? Given that Sky Sports and Opta have given us 0% chance.
I did see a few people, and I think I saw Fulham paying 500 to 1. I think it was.
Oh, I've seen a Sky Bet did 1,000.
1,000 to 1. I mean, it's surely worth a bet. You have to at that point.
I just find it funny that Aston Villa got 0.06%, where we didn't even get that. We obviously in the 100,000th. Yeah, sort of.
It was very deep, I think. But interestingly, I don't know if you guys.
They just didn't have enough decimal points.
I think that was more the case. Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw though that Fulham actually have better odds of avoiding relegation than Man City do this season.
They do, yeah.
Because of the potential for Man City's points deduction, which I think is definitely something
That's a
to
hot
hang our
bet.
hats on.
I think it's probably the first time where I think it's 10-1 for Man City to get relegated, but also 2-1 for Man City to win the league. So yeah, there you go. I think that's the first time that's
Well,
ever happened.
I think the more realistic outcome is that it isn't decided even before the start of next season.
Well, I think that's a very interesting multi-bet, and I'd like to get odds on Man City to win the Premier League and get relegated in the same season. Surely there's someone who's going to give me those odds. I did just check. Fulham are still paying 1,000 to 1. Somehow
There you go.
Bournemouth paying 500 to 1, and Brighton 250
West
to
Ham
1.
were 200 to 1.
Yeah, they're back to 1,000 to 1 now, so no worries there.
Good.
But yeah, probably Look. We always say gamble responsibly, so don't put money on Fulham to win the Premier League, because that's not gambling responsibly. That's throwing away however many pounds or dollars you put on that bet. Guys, I think we can probably wrap it up there, though. I think we're all, in a weird way, looking forward to this weekend.
Oh, definitely.
And I'm kind of excited to see what this team does against Man City. And we say it every season. Last season, it wasn't exciting to watch what we did, conceding 9 goals and scoring just 1. But I do feel it just feels different going into this game, which is always slightly worrying, knowing the way Fulham are. But I am hopeful that we, if not get a result, at least put up a decent fight and put in a performance that is fitting of the Fulham team that we've seen this season. So I'm hopeful. I'm positive going into this one, and even off the back of a defeat, I don't think I'll be crying into the international break. So, yeah, looking forward to this one big time. And Skibby, thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you for your hosting efforts as well earlier in the week.
No worries. Thank you for having me, and it's been fun. I'm looking forward to the weekend, and I'm going to be in France, so we'll see. I'm hoping to sort of keep tabs on it somehow, but I still think we might be able to do something.
Yeah, I think best thing to do, Skibby, is probably keep an eye on the Discord as well, because I'm sure we'll be able to work out a way for you to keep tabs on the game through all the live updates that we put on the in the chat. Dad, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having this good chat. I'm fascinated that we managed to talk for 56 minutes about a preview.
The same 11.
Same 11. Going through all the permutations, knowing deep in our hearts that none of it was ever going to change. But there you go. That's so Craven.
I was going to say it could have been a 4-minute podcast. Team will be the same. We will lose to Man City. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your weekend. And come on, you Whites. But yeah, look, a big thank you to everyone who's joined in on the live stream. Good to see some people following along and getting involved. Big thanks to everyone who continues to download the podcast and share the podcast as well. We really do appreciate all the publicity you can give us. Please do make sure you subscribe to the podcast. You can get this podcast anywhere on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcasts, anywhere that you get your podcasts. So please do continue to support us and continue to help us grow. We really do appreciate all the love and the support. Thank you to Skibby and Dad again. And as always, come on, you Whites.